Dominic Kane had a tattoo on his palm that only one other person in the world was ever allowed to have. His wife. It was inked during their wedding ritual, a blood oath, a sacred bond. She died 6 years ago, or so he thought. So when a 5-year-old girl wandered into his meeting, touched his hand, and said, "Sir, my mom has one too," the most dangerous man on the Eastern Seaboard stopped breathing. Because that tattoo couldn't be copied, couldn't be faked, and the only woman who ever bore it was buried in a grave he visits every year. What happened next would tear his empire apart. Welcome to our channel. Like this video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Clara Bennett had worked as a maid in the Kane estate for 5 years. She kept her head down, scrubbed floors, folded linens, never looked the boss in the eye. But Clara had a secret she didn't even know she was keeping. On her left palm, hidden beneath long sleeves, was a tattoo. A lotus flower. Faded. Intricate. She didn't remember getting it. She didn't remember anything before waking up in a hospital 6 years ago with no memory and a new name. The doctors told her it was a scar. She believed them. She never showed anyone. Until tonight. Her daughter Ava was 5, curious, fearless, and terrible at following rules. Clara had told her what she always told her when dangerous men gathered. Stay hidden. Don't let them see you. But Ava had seen something that made her forget every warning. The man on the throne had a mark on his hand. A lotus. The same lotus her mother had. So she walked straight up to Dominic Kane, looked into his cold eyes, and said, "Sir, my mom has one too." The room went silent. The kind of silence that comes before someone dies. That tattoo was sacred. Given only twice in a lifetime. Once at birth to those born Kane, and once during the blood oath ritual, when a bride's blood is mixed with her husband's, and the lotus is inked onto her palm forever. Only one woman had ever received that mark from Dominic, his wife, the woman who died in a car explosion on their wedding night. No one else could have that tattoo. No one. Dominic's voice came out like gravel. "Bring me the mother." When Clara was dragged into the grand hall, she was shaking. She didn't understand why armed men had pulled her from the laundry room, why her daughter stood by the throne, why the most powerful man in the city stared at her like he'd seen a ghost. Then he grabbed her wrist, pushed back her sleeve. There it was, the lotus, the exact design inked during the marriage ritual. Dominic pulled a chain from beneath his shirt. 2 wedding rings. He pressed one against her palm, against the center of the lotus. It fit perfectly. This woman had been married to him. Clara looked up, trembling, terrified. And Dominic Kane whispered a question that would unravel everything. "Who told you Clara Kane was dead?" Dominic rose from his throne. The room held its breath. He hadn't stood during a summit in 3 years, hadn't shown urgency, hadn't shown anything. But now his eyes were locked on the trembling woman his men had dragged through the doors, and something in his face had cracked. Clara Bennett looked exactly like what she was supposed to be. A maid, plain uniform, hair pulled back, hands rough from years of scrubbing floors she didn't know once belonged to her. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Dominic walked toward her. Slow, deliberate. Each step echoed through the silent hall. The underbosses watched. The soldiers watched. Even the air seemed to watch. He stopped in front of her. Clara couldn't meet his eyes. She stared at the floor, at his shoes, at anything but the cold fury radiating off him. Then he grabbed her wrist. She flinched, tried to pull back, but his grip was iron. He pushed her sleeve up. Slowly, deliberately, like he already knew what he'd find, and was terrified to be right. There it was, the lotus of Kane, faded from years of scrubbing and hiding, but unmistakable. Every petal, every line, every curve of ink that had been pressed into her skin with blood and ritual and vows that were supposed to last forever. And it wasn't just any lotus, it was the marriage lotus. 3 petals different from the birthright mark. A design only given once, during the blood oath ritual. A design only one woman alive should bear. His wife. His dead wife. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Chairs scraped. The underbosses surged forward, demanding answers, shouting questions, reaching for weapons out of sheer confusion. Dominic didn't turn around. He raised one hand. Silence. Instant. Complete. His men knew that gesture. It meant the next person who speaks dies. Dominic's eyes never left Clara's palm. His jaw was tight. His breathing was controlled. But his hand, the hand holding her wrist, was trembling. He reached beneath his shirt and pulled out a chain. 2 rings hung from it. Gold. Simple. One larger than the other. He'd worn them against his heart for 6 years. Every day, every night, every moment since they told him his wife had burned in a car meant to take them to their honeymoon. He took the smaller ring, her ring, and pressed it against her palm. Against the center of the lotus, against the scar where the ring had been placed during the ritual, pressed into the fresh ink as the final seal of the blood oath. It fit perfectly, like a key sliding into a lock that had waited 6 years to open. Clara stared at the ring on her palm. She didn't understand. She didn't remember. But somewhere deep in her chest, something stirred. Something that recognized this moment even if her mind couldn't. Dominic's voice was barely a whisper. "Who are you?" Clara looked up at him, at the grief and rage and desperate hope burning in his eyes, and told him the only truth she knew. "I don't know." Dominic cleared the hall with 3 words. "Everyone out. Now." No one argued. Not the underbosses, not the soldiers, not even the men who'd served him for 20 years. They filed out in silence, casting glances at the maid who somehow bore the mark of a dead queen. The doors slammed shut. Now it was just Dominic, Clara, and the truth neither of them understood. He circled her slowly. She stood frozen in the center of the grand hall, arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. "Tell me who you are." "I told you." Her voice cracked. "Clara Bennett! I'm nobody! I'm just—" "You're wearing my wife's tattoo." "I don't know how." She finally looked at him, desperate, terrified. "I woke up in a hospital 6 years ago. No memory, no past, nothing. They told me I was in a car accident. They told me my name was Clara Bennett. They told me the mark on my hand was a scar from the crash." Dominic's eyes narrowed. "Who told you?" "The doctors, the nurses. I don't remember their faces. I don't remember anything before that hospital room." She was telling the truth. He could see it in her eyes. The confusion, the fear, the utter blankness where her past should be. But that tattoo didn't lie. Dominic walked to a cabinet against the wall, pulled out a drawer, retrieved something he hadn't looked at in years because looking at it felt like dying. A photograph. He crossed back to Clara and held it in front of her face. A bride in white, standing beside him on the happiest night of his life. Her palm raised to the camera, displaying the fresh lotus tattoo, still bleeding, still sacred, still binding them together forever. The woman in the photograph was Clara. Clara stared at the image. Her hands began to shake. Her breathing turned shallow. Her pupils dilated like something was tearing through her mind. Then she collapsed. She hit the marble floor, clutching her skull, screaming. Dominic dropped to his knees beside her. "What do you see?" "Fire," she gasped. "A car. I'm in a car, and it's burning, and—" Her body convulsed. "A room. Dark. Cold. There's a needle. Someone's holding me down. Tears and sweat streamed down her face. A voice. A man's voice. He keeps saying it, over and over. Clara Kane is dead. You are Clara Bennett now. Forget. 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 She went limp, unconscious, breathing but broken. Dominic gathered her in his arms, held her against his chest, felt her heartbeat. Alive. Real. Impossible. His mind raced. Someone had taken her, drugged her, erased her memory, given her a new name, planted her in his own house as a servant. This wasn't an accident. This was a ritual, a reverse blood oath. They couldn't unbind her blood, couldn't remove the ink, so they shattered her mind instead. And only someone inside the family would know how. Dominic looked down at his wife's face. Then he whispered a promise. I'm going to find who did this, and I'm going to kill them slowly. Across the city, Victor Salerno poured himself a whiskey. His hand was shaking. The phone call had lasted 11 seconds. 11 seconds to destroy 6 years of perfect work. The maid has the marriage lotus. Dominic saw it. He cleared the hall. Victor drained the glass in one swallow. Poured another. Drained that, too. He walked to the window of his penthouse office and stared out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in the Kane estate, his carefully constructed lie was collapsing. And all because of a 5-year-old girl with a teddy bear. He laughed. Bitterly. Quietly. A child. A stupid, curious child who didn't know enough to stay invisible. 6 years. 6 years since he'd staged the car explosion on Dominic's wedding night. 6 years since he'd pulled Clara from the wreckage before the flames could take her. 6 years since he'd handed her over to doctors who specialized in making people forget. It had been elegant, perfect, cruel in ways that satisfied him. He couldn't kill her outright. The old families believed in the blood oath, believed that killing a blood-bound wife brought a curse on the killer, a death that followed you, slow and inevitable. Victor wasn't superstitious, but the other bosses were. And if they ever discovered he'd murdered Dominic's bride, they'd bury him alive just to avoid the bad luck. So he did something worse. He erased her. The drugs took 3 months to fully work. 3 months of injections and conditioning and a voice whispering in her ear every night. Clara Kane is dead. You are Clara Bennett. You have no past. You have no husband. Forget. When she finally broke, he gave her a new identity. A widow. A maid. And then, because Victor had a taste for poetry, he planted her in the Kane estate itself, let her scrub the floors of the house she once ruled, let her serve drinks to the man she once loved. Dominic never looked at the help, never noticed the ghost walking his halls. It was beautiful, but Victor had made one mistake. The tattoo! He couldn't remove it. Burning it off would leave scars. Scars invited questions, and questions led to answers he couldn't afford. So he left it. Told her it was damage from the accident. Gambled that no one would ever look at a maid's hands. For 6 years, no one did. Until tonight. Victor set down his glass, pulled out his phone, dialed a number only 3 people in the world had. It's me. I need a team at the Kane estate within the hour. A pause on the other end, then target? 2. The maid, Clara Bennett, and her daughter. The child? The child knows too much, and she's his blood. Victor's voice went cold. Kill them both. Make it look like the Morellis did it. Dominic will start a war, and in the chaos, we take everything. He hung up, walked back to the window, smiled. Tonight, the Kane bloodline ends. They put her in the East Wing. Clara didn't know why this room, didn't know why the guards stationed outside looked at her differently now, not like a maid, but like something precious, something dangerous. She stood alone in the center of the bedroom. It was beautiful, massive. Silk curtains, Antique furniture. A 4-poster bed that looked like it belonged to royalty. She didn't belong here, but her body disagreed. Without thinking, she walked to the dresser. 3rd drawer. Her hand found candles exactly where she somehow knew they'd be. She froze. How did she know that? She moved to the window, stepped left to avoid a floorboard. It creaked anyway, but she'd known it would creak. Known exactly where. Her heart began to pound. She crossed to the vanity, sat down, stared at her reflection in the ornate mirror. A stranger's face stared back. A maid's face, plain, tired, forgettable. But her hands moved again without permission. They pressed the corner of the mirror frame, twisted, pulled. A hidden compartment swung open. Clara's breath caught. Inside was a wedding veil, yellowed with age but still delicate, still beautiful. Beside it, dried flowers. Roses, she thought, though the color had long faded. And beneath both, a leather journal. She pulled it out with trembling hands. Opened it. The handwriting inside was hers. She knew it instantly. The loops of the letters. The way the words slanted right. This was her hand, her thoughts, her life, written in pages she didn't remember creating. She flipped to the last entry. Dated 6 years ago. The day of the wedding. I haven't told Dominic yet. I'll tell him on the honeymoon. I wanted to wait until we were alone, just the 2 of us, before I said the words out loud. We're going to have a baby. Clara stopped breathing. Pregnant. She was pregnant on her wedding night. Pregnant when the car exploded. Pregnant when they erased her mind and stole her life. Her hand went to her stomach, then to her mouth, then to the lotus tattoo on her palm. For 6 years, she'd thought it was a scar. Now she saw it for what it was. A promise, a vow, a bond that someone had tried to destroy but couldn't. She broke. Sobs tore through her chest. She clutched the journal to her heart and wept for a life she couldn't remember and a love she didn't know she'd lost. She didn't hear the door open. Didn't hear the small footsteps crossing the room. But she felt tiny arms wrap around her neck. Ava. Mommy? Why are you crying? Clara pulled her daughter close, held her so tight it probably hurt. But she couldn't let go. Couldn't stop shaking. I don't know, baby. I don't know anything anymore. Ava pulled back, looked at her mother with 5-year-old wisdom that saw more than it should. It's okay, Mommy. She touched Clara's palm, traced the lotus. The nice man has the same one. I think he's our family. Clara stared at her daughter. Her daughter. His daughter. Dominic came to her room at midnight. The guards stepped aside without a word. The door opened, and there he was, the most dangerous man in the city, standing in the doorway like he didn't know if he was allowed to enter. Clara sat on the edge of the bed. Ava was asleep beside her, curled up with her teddy bear, exhausted from a day she was too young to understand. Dominic's eyes went to the child first, lingered there, then moved to Clara. Can I come in? She nodded. He closed the door behind him, pulled a chair across from the bed, sat down heavily, like he was carrying something that had been crushing him for years. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Dominic reached beneath his shirt, pulled out the chain, let the 2 wedding rings catch the moonlight. I never took them off, he said quietly. Not once. Not in 6 years. Clara stared at the rings. Her ring. His ring. Pressed together over his heart all this time. After you died. He stopped. Corrected himself. After I thought you died, I became something else. Something worse. I built this empire on rage, on cruelty, on the kind of coldness that made other men fear me. His voice cracked, just slightly, just enough. Because the only person who ever made me human was gone, and I didn't want to be human anymore. It hurt too much. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. "I don't remember you," she whispered. "I want to. I'm trying. But there's just nothing." "I know. How can you look at me like that when I don't even know who you are?" Dominic leaned forward. His eyes, those cold, terrifying eyes that made grown men beg, were soft now. Broken. "Because I know who you are. I know the woman who laughed at my jokes when no one else would, who told me I was more than this life, who made me believe I could be good." He reached out, took her hand, traced the lotus on her palm. "This mark was inked with my blood. You're bound to me, and I'm bound to you. That didn't end when they stole your memory." Clara's chest heaved. She reached for the journal on the nightstand, handed it to him. "Read the last page." Dominic opened it. Read the words. Read them again. "We're going to have a baby." His whole body went still. Slowly, he turned to look at the sleeping child beside Clara. The dark hair, the stubborn chin, the fearless spirit that had walked her straight into a room full of killers. His mother's eyes, his bloodline's defiance. "She's mine," he breathed. Clara nodded, tears streaming. "I was pregnant on our wedding night. I never got to tell you." Dominic stared at his daughter. His daughter, living under his roof for 5 years, invisible, while he drowned in grief for a family he thought was dead. He broke. The most dangerous man in the city put his face in his hands and wept. Dominic made one call. 20 minutes later, Enzo Marchetti walked through the door. He was 73 years old, retired for 5 years. But when the boss called, Enzo answered. He'd served 3 generations of Kanes. He'd served them with blood and loyalty and silence. And right now, looking at Dominic's face, he knew something had gone terribly wrong. "Tell me what you need." Dominic slid a folder across the desk. "The night of my wedding, the car explosion. I need you to trace every movement Victor Salerno made." Enzo's eyes narrowed. "Victor, he's your consigliere. He's a dead man. I just need proof first." Enzo took the folder, opened it, and began to work. It took 4 hours. 4 hours of pulling records, making calls, threatening men who thought they'd buried their secrets deep enough. But Enzo Marchetti had been uncovering lies since before Victor Salerno was born. The truth came together piece by piece. Victor had volunteered to sweep the honeymoon car for bombs that night, standard procedure for a boss's wedding. He reported it clean, gave the all-clear himself. 10 minutes later, it exploded. But Victor hadn't just planted the bomb. He'd been waiting nearby, pulled Clara from the wreckage before the flames took her. Let the world believe she'd burned. Enzo found the payments next, $50,000 to a black market doctor named Harlan Vance. Specialty: memory suppression, psychological reconditioning, making people forget who they were. Then the safe house, an abandoned building in the industrial district, owned by a shell company that traced back to Victor's mother's maiden name. Clara had been held there for 3 months while they broke her mind. And finally, the cruelest part, a carefully constructed identity. Clara Bennett. Widow, no family, no history, and a job placement at the Kane estate, arranged through a staffing agency Victor controlled. He'd planted her in her own home, made her scrub the floors she once walked as a bride, made her serve drinks at parties where men toasted Dominic's dead wife, made her invisible in the house where she should have been queen. For 6 years. Dominic stared at the evidence spread across his desk. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage so deep it had nowhere to go. He watched her, Dominic said quietly. Every day. He watched her clean and cook and bow her head to men who should have bowed to her. And he smiled. Enzo said nothing. There was nothing to say. Dominic stood, walked to the window, pressed his palm against the glass, the lotus tattoo visible in the reflection. "I want him alive," he said. "I want him to know why he's dying. I want him to feel every second of it." He turned back to Enzo. His eyes were ice. "Swear it with me. Blood oath, over the lotus." Enzo rose, crossed to Dominic, pressed his palm against his boss's. "For every stolen kiss," Dominic said. "For every stolen year," Enzo answered. "For every moment my daughter grew up without her father." The oath was sealed. Victor Salerno was already dead. He just didn't know it yet. Victor struck first. The dinner had been his idea, a gathering of the 5 families to celebrate unity. Dominic had agreed because refusing would look weak, because he didn't yet have enough proof to move against his consigliere publicly. That hesitation cost him everything. The first shot came at 9:47 p.m. One of Dominic's guards dropped, then another. Then the soldiers lining the walls turned their guns, not outward, but inward, toward Dominic, toward his men, Victor's men, planted months ago, waiting for this moment. Explosions rocked the north gate. The lights in the east wing went dark. Screams echoed through the estate as chaos swallowed the Kane Empire whole. Victor stepped into the grand hall like he owned it. He walked past the bodies, past the overturned chairs, past the bosses of the 5 families who sat frozen, unsure whose side to take. He stopped in the center of the room, smiled. "Gentlemen," he announced, "I apologize for the disruption, but there's something you need to know about Dominic Kane." Dominic was on his feet. 3 of Victor's men had their guns trained on him. His own soldiers, the ones still breathing, were pinned down across the room. "He's gone mad," Victor continued, "chasing ghosts, claiming a maid is his dead wife, obsessing over a servant's child." He pulled documents from his jacket, tossed them onto the table. "Medical evaluations, witness statements, 6 years of erratic behavior hidden from all of you. The Kane Empire is being led by a man who can't separate reality from grief." The bosses murmured. Exchanged glances. Victor had played this perfectly. Sowed out first, then offered the solution. "I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. The Kane family needs new leadership, stable leadership. Tonight?" Dominic laughed. It was cold, bitter, dangerous. "You think paperwork will save you, Victor?" He moved before anyone could react. The first guard died with his own gun pressed under his chin. The second took a knife to the throat. Dominic's knife, hidden in his sleeve for exactly this moment. Blood sprayed across the marble floor. Dominic grabbed a third man, used him as a shield, fired twice into the chaos. "Clara!" he roared across the room. "Get to the panic room, now!" His remaining loyal soldiers understood. They broke toward the east wing, toward Clara, toward Ava. But Victor was still smiling. That smile made Dominic's blood run cold. "You think I didn't plan for this?" Victor called out over the gunfire. "You think I'd let them reach that room?" Dominic's heart stopped. The panic room. The escape route ran through the wine cellar. Victor knew the estate as well as he did. Knew every passage, every secret. "I have a man waiting for them, Dominic. My best. By the time you fight through my soldiers, your wife and daughter will be dead. Again." Victor spread his arms wide. "You can kill me, or you can save them, but you can't do both." Dominic made his choice in a heartbeat. He ran. The wine cellar was dark. Clara pulled Ava through the corridor, following the route the guards had shown her. The panic room was close. 50 more feet. 40. Then the lights went out, and someone started clapping. Slow, deliberate, coming from the shadows ahead. Victor Salerno stepped into the dim emergency lighting, smiling, blocking the only way forward. "Hello, Clara." She pushed Ava behind her. Stay back." 6 years, Victor said, walking closer. 6 years I watched you scrub floors in your own house, watched you serve dinner to the man you married, watched you bow your head to men who should have kissed your ring. His smile widened. And you never remembered, not once. It was beautiful. Clara's heart pounded. Why? Why did you do this? Because Dominic was weak. Love made him weak, and weak men don't deserve empires. Victor raised his gun. But don't worry, you won't have to wonder much longer. He aimed at Ava. I want you to watch her die first, the way you watched your old life burn. Something snapped inside Clara. Not broke. Unlocked. Her body moved before her mind caught up. 6 years of emptiness shattered like glass, and beneath it, muscle memory, training, instinct buried so deep no drug could erase it. She was Clara Marchetti before she was Clara Kane, Enzo's niece, raised in the family, trained from childhood. Her hand shot out, grabbed Victor's wrist, twisted. The gun fired into the ceiling. Victor snarled, pulled a knife, slashed. The blade caught her arm. Blood sprayed across the wine bottles. Clara didn't stop. She drove her elbow into his throat, caught his knife hand, bent it backward until something cracked. The blade clattered to the floor. They fought like animals. Brutal. Desperate. Bloody. Victor was stronger. But Clara was fighting for her daughter. She caught the gun as it fell, slammed the grip into his temple. He dropped. When Dominic burst through the cellar door, he found Clara standing over Victor's body, gun aimed at his skull, blood dripping from her wounded arm onto the lotus tattoo on her palm. She looked up at her husband, and her eyes were different, clear, awake. I remember, she said, her voice steady, strong, the voice of the woman he'd married. I remember the ritual, the vows, the blood oath that bound us together. Tears streamed down her face. I remember everything, and I remember you. Dominic crossed to her. Didn't take the gun, didn't push her aside. He placed his palm against hers. Lotus to lotus. Blood to blood. Then finish it together, he said. Victor's eyes went wide. Dominic, wait, I can explain. I did it for the family. You stole my wife. You stole my daughter. You stole 6 years of my life. Dominic's hand closed over Clara's on the gun. There's nothing to explain. They pulled the trigger together. The shot echoed through the cellar, and Clara Kane finally came home. The tribunal convened 3 days later. The 5 families gathered in neutral territory, an old church that had witnessed 100 confessions and 1,000 lies. But today, there would be only truth. Clara Kane walked into that room like a queen returning from exile. She wore black silk. Her hair was pulled back. Her arm was bandaged where Victor's knife had cut her, and on her palm, displayed openly for the first time in 6 years, was the lotus of Cain. The old bosses stared. They remembered the wedding, remembered the explosion, remembered the funeral where Dominic had stood like a statue while they lowered an empty casket into the ground. Now the ghost had returned, and she had evidence. Clara placed the journal on the table. The medical records. The testimony of Dr. Harlan Vance, who had traded every secret for his worthless life. She spoke for 40 minutes, not as a victim, not as a maid, but as Clara Kane, blood-bound wife of the dawn, mother of the air, a woman who had been erased and had clawed her way back from nothing. When she finished, the room was silent. The bosses deliberated for less than an hour. Victor Salerno was condemned unanimously. The sentence? The concrete, buried alive in the foundation of a building, a death reserved for traitors who violated sacred oaths, a death with no grave, no marker, no memory. When they dragged him from the room, Victor screamed, "I did it for the family! I did it to make us strong! Dominic was weak!" The door slammed shut. No one listened. No one cared. 1 week later, Dominic stood on the balcony of the Kane estate. The sun was setting over the city. Gold and crimson light spilled across the skyline, across the empire he'd built on grief, now rebuilt on something stronger. Clara stood beside him, her hand in his, their lotus tattoos aligned, palm to palm. The mark Victor had tried to make meaningless, the bond he'd tried to destroy. Still there, still sacred, still theirs. Ava sat on Dominic's shoulders, her teddy bear tucked under one arm. She'd been calling him Daddy for 3 days now. Every time she said it, something in his chest broke and healed at the same time. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Why do you and Mommy have the same drawing on your hands?" Dominic looked at Clara. Clara smiled. A real smile, the kind he thought he'd never see again. "Because," Dominic said, his voice thick with 6 years of grief finally releasing, "it means we belong to each other. Forever. No matter what anyone tries to take from us." Ava considered this with 5-year-old seriousness. Then she nodded. "I want one too. When I'm big." Clara laughed. The sound hit Dominic like sunlight after a decade of rain. "When you're big," Clara promised, "when you find someone worth bleeding for." The sun sank below the city. The empire stood. The family endured. Bound by blood. Marked by ink. Together until the end. If this story has your attention, hit that subscribe button and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Every story we tell connects the past to the present, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one.